Welcome to my 5-minute interview series designed to last the length of time it takes to drink a quick cuppa. Now, I'm going to be speaking to someone who has spent the better part of a decade researching how the law can be used to make a country more authoritarian. Now, I'm going to be speaking to experts in authoritarianism, democracy, lawmaking, policymaking, human rights, people from political systems far and wide, in an attempt to try and fill some of the inevitable gaps in my narrow perspective. Now, today I'm going to be speaking to someone who has spent the better part of a decade researching how the law can be used to make a country more authoritarian. Now, Meng Ye will soon be completing her PhD on Chinese legal reform at the University of Tübingen here in Germany, and moving to the Columbia Law School in New York to, as she puts it, witness the full-blown authoritarianization and potential end of the American democracy. We all watched how Roe versus Wade gave the power to ban abortions back to states. Now there's a new case up for overturning which could give the power to decide how federal elections work back to the states. What is Moore versus Harper, and what could it mean if it's now overturned?
So Moore versus Harper is a case that is now going to be heard by the Supreme Court of the United States this coming fall. And the outcome of that is going to touch upon the core of the American democracy because it will have impacts on further elections at the federal level. So the background story of that is the state legislature of North Carolina, the state of North Carolina, I think it was last year, drew a new congressional map, which is the districting division for the coming federal election. And that map was ruled as unconstitutional by the state Supreme Court of North Carolina because they considered it heavily gerrymandered in favor of the Republican, which is already in the majority in the state legislature of North Carolina. And the GOP of North Carolina brought this case now to the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court is now going to decide, I think the result is going to come out next year. They are going to decide whether or not in favor of the state of North Carolina. And essentially the implication out of that result is that whether or not state legislatures should have the sole power in deciding over election rules. In this case, it was about a congressional map.
Would this overturning essentially give the power to decide how elections work to those who would then be running in these elections?
Yes, so essentially, if the Supreme Court decides to decide in favor of the state of North Carolina, meaning to overturn this case, essentially it would, let's say, create possibilities or pave way for future elections to be manipulated by already sitting majorities. So, for example, if a certain state legislature is in a certain majority, it could easily pass election rules that would work in favor of themselves so that they can stay in majority and also send representatives to the U.S. Congress from their own parties, likely not reflecting voters' voices.
Would this overturning then help authoritarian-minded lawmakers to dilute the voices of certain demographics?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they think in the mindset of whether or not they are authoritarian-minded. I think in a very direct manner, politicians try to preserve and maximize their own party interests, especially in such a two-party system. Yeah, and we've seen that gerrymandering has been done by both parties in the U.S. for many, many years. It's really a very, very established practice. And so far there is no, what they say is that I think it was a previous case decided by the Supreme Court that basically said there is no legal remedy at the federal level for partisan gerrymandering.
So there's no federal protection for democracy in the United States system at the moment?
Not sure if I would go that far. That I think this decision was particularly about gerrymandering, whether or not there were federal level, or let's say that there are legal bases at the federal level that you can use to ban or restrict gerrymandering.
Is there a way for this overturning to end well for American democracy?
So in the U.S., like in their domestic reports, there are a lot of voices that are saying this is going to mean the end of the American democracy. And sort of the less fatalistic ones would say that maybe this would present a opportunity for example, for the Congress to pass a bill or legislation that can fix it at the federal level. So pass a bill that would ban or at least restrict partisan gerrymandering to some extent at the federal level. So that would be an outcome that would probably have more positive meanings.